Story time about how my crazy celeb ex made me take a lie detector test. This is my own story time. Like I said in part 4, he thought that the only reason I was working at that hookah lounge was because I was trying to be a hoe. He thought that I was trying to get rich men, was completely paranoid about me stealing money from him. A few days before that, he had slapped me for the first time. Do you know why he slapped me? Because we were arguing and I put a plastic bottle down hard at the table. He thought that was unacceptable, so he decided to slap me. A few days after that, grabbed me by my neck and threw me on the bed. The reason he did that is because I asked him never to touch me like that again. At the time, I never realized that people that are on substances are unreasonable. You can't tell someone who's on substances not to do something. They will want to do it more. He was already aggressive because of it. Because he thought that I was lying, stealing, cheating, hoeing around, he asked me to take a lie detector test. And of course I said yes because I wanted to prove to him that he was wrong. Follow for more time about how my abusive celebrity ex made me take a lie detector test. This is my own story. He asked me to do the lie detector test and I said yes. He makes the appointment and we show up. Let's call the lie detector man Tom. Tom looked me up and down and told my ex that I was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. This right away makes my ex crazy jealous. He just stares the guy down. Then he stares at me. Like I'm the one that did something wrong. The guy straps me up to the machine and I'm already nervous. My heart would not stop racing. He asked me if my name was really Esther. Very basic stuff. Then he asked me about all the things my ex has accused me of. You guys, my ex thought that I was lying about my name. He thought that I was sleeping around, was stealing his money, that I was stealing his substances. After the test, he tells my ex that I had failed every single question and that I was a liar and that he needed to be careful. Ex grabs me and tells me that he's gonna take me home. I was terrified. Part 6 is up. Time about how my abusive celebrity ex made me take a lie detector test. This is my story time. Once the guy tells my ex that I failed the polygraph test, which there should have been no reason for me to fail. I was being completely honest. My ex's face just turns red. He tells me to get in his car and he's gonna take me home. It was complete verbal abuse. He was calling me a dump truck, slut, a whore. Every single bad word you can think of, he was calling me. Get to my apartment and I literally run out of his car. I lock myself in my apartment and 2 hours later I see him peeking through my window. Because I'm an idiot, I open the door. He starts to cry and tells me that he's willing to forgive me for all the things that I lied about. Obviously, I couldn't convince him otherwise because I failed the polygraph. Come to find out 2 weeks later, the polygraph guy was a complete fraud. The test wasn't even real. But somehow my ex managed to get scammed. And of course, my ex didn't believe it though. He still thought that I was even lying about my name. 2 weeks later, he proposes to me in the bathroom while we're showering. I'm gonna have to do another part. Story time about my crazy celebrity abusive ex. So like I said in part 4, that was the first time he had ever gotten physical with me. It was a slap, okay? And a slap hurts. Especially if you've never been slapped before, it's like being punched in the face because you just don't know what's coming. So at the time, I was working at a hookah lounge on Hollywood Boulevard, like the crappiest place to ever work. One day he tells me that he wants to go visit me at the hookah lounge. And I was like, sure, like how sweet of him. But there's always an ulterior motive with these narcissistic, toxic men. So he comes to the hookah lounge, doesn't tell me he's there, and he proceeds to watch me outside of the window for maybe 40 minutes. And the only reason I found out that he was watching me was because one of the guys that was working there, he's like, hey, that guy's been watching you for like half an hour. When my coworker tells me that, my stomach drops because I'm like, okay, he's already mad at me for even having this job because that was the whole thing. He didn't want me to work there. And he would say things like, you know, why do you need to work there? Why are you insisting on having a job? So I go outside and I'm like, hi, you're just standing out here. And I'm already like trembling. My knees are shaking at this point. So he says, let's go out to dinner. Do you think we went to dinner? No, we didn't go to dinner. He took me straight to his house and grilled me, like asked me questions for like 3 hours. He starts asking me who my boss was, who my coworkers were. He even asked me for my boss's phone number. Like he was gonna call my boss and confirm that I worked there because he had this theory that I didn't actually work there even though he saw me for half an hour serving table. So my uniform to the hookah lounge was a corset and a mini skirt, and he hated that, obviously, right? He hated the uniform so much he stood there and forced me to take it off. So then he tells me, I'll give you $4,000 a month if you quit your job, enough for you to pay for your apartment and, you know, your bills. I say no because I'm like, I don't want him to think that I'm only with him for his money, which looking back, I should have said yes, but honestly, that would have been for the wrong reasons, right? I say no, and he gets extremely angry. Like he goes into his closet where he has his substances and starts doing a bunch of stuff. And when he was doing stuff, it was like a bunch of things at once. It was like a cocktail. Oh my God, that car alarm is driving me insane. I'm sorry. So he comes out of his closet and I can tell it's like the evil version of him, right? And he's already mad because he thinks I'm going to start hoeing or continue to hoe around because I didn't take the money. Then he grabs my phone and calls my boss and asks my boss how I was doing at my job. Then he leaves his house and locks me in there. Go to part 6. Story time about how my husband left me for my twin brother. I, female, 25, have been married to my husband for 6 months. When we started dating, it was just casual. I never thought I would marry this man, but it happened. We had a pregnancy scare, and that's when he told me that if I was pregnant, that he would marry me. We took a few pregnancy tests, and most of them came out positive. So we were convinced we were having a kid together. Of course, he asked me to marry him, and not until 3 months later did we decide to go to the doctor. And as soon as we got to the doctor, they said, "You're not pregnant." We couldn't believe it, but nonetheless, we were still married. He and I weren't exactly soulmates. When we started dating, we had a lot of fun together, but my friends would always make comments about him possibly being gay. I never took him seriously because he was interested in me, a woman. Sometimes my male friends would say, "Oh, he stares at me a lot," or that he would ask them to go out for drinks by themselves. I thought he was just trying to be nice and getting to know my friends. Obviously, I was wrong. My twin brother and I don't have a really close relationship. We had a falling out when he found out that I was pregnant. He thought I was ruining my life by having a kid, but it turns out I wasn't pregnant. So we started getting close again. He would come over to our house and spend a lot of time with my husband and I. But then I realized that they were doing naughty things together. Follow for part 2. Story time about how my husband left me for my twin brother. I would come home and find my twin brother on the couch with my husband. Of course, I just thought they were trying to get to know each other. I mean, we just got married and all. Got to the point where my brother was coming over to my place every single day. And my husband and him would hang out all day together. My husband works from home, so he's always there. I own my own business, so I'm usually not home before 3 p.m. Every time I would come home, my twin brother was already there. Actually, I told my twin brother he needed to give me and my new husband our privacy. That's when he said that I was overreacting and that he was just trying to get to know him. Then he said, "Are you jealous?" I looked him straight in the face and I said, "Why should I be jealous? You're my twin brother." Then he laughed, got up, and left my house. And just like that, I knew something was going on. In part 1, I told you guys about those friends that warned me about my husband being gay. I decided to call on my friends and ask them to tell me why they thought my husband might be gay. They gave me lists. And I started writing everything down. And everything started connecting. I'd come to the realization that I married a gay man and that he was possibly having an affair with my twin brother. I mean, could things get worse? I decided to confront my husband. What he told me literally shocked me. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my husband left me for my twin brother. I confronted my husband. He told me that my brother essentially had been following him around and wouldn't leave him alone. In other words, he was putting all the blame on my brother. But instead of believing him right away, I grilled him. Started asking him questions about his past, like why he had never had a relationship before me with another woman, why all of my friends, literally all of them, thought he was gay. Of course, he denied everything, so I got on the phone and called my brother. I asked him to come over really quick, and he did. And of course, I started interrogating him too. That's when I told my husband to repeat what he had told me. But he couldn't. He looked at my brother and said, "Sorry, I told her the truth." My brother said, "Which is?" And my husband says, "You won't leave me alone and that you've been harassing me." That's when my brother tried to swing at him. Then my brother spilled all the beans. He said that on my wedding night, my husband and him made out. And that after that, my brother would come to our house after I left every single morning to be with my husband and to do all the nasty things they wanted to do to each other. My brother told me that the one who started it was my husband. I looked at my husband and he couldn't deny anything. I divorced him the next day. My now ex is trying to convince my brother to be in a relationship with him, but he doesn't want to. And my dad is hunting my ex down. Bye. Story time about how my boyfriend shames me for having cellulite. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. I'm 24 years old and my boyfriend is 21. According to him, he has never been with any girl who's had cellulite before, or even an ounce of body fat. Yes, I know what you're thinking, he's a total asshole, which in that sense, he is. But the rest of the time, he's completely fine and actually sweet. We met last year at a friend's party. At the party, I instantly fell in love with him. I thought he was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. And it was reciprocated. I saw him from across the room and he made eye contact. A few minutes later, he walked over to me and just struck up a conversation. I know that people present themselves the way they want to be seen, especially when they're trying to impress someone they're attracted to. He started telling me about how he's studying to be a doctor, how he volunteers at animal shelters, and that every single weekend he also volunteers at the soup kitchen. Everything he said was absolutely perfect. By the end of the night, he had asked me out on a date and I said yes. I did explain to him that I didn't want anything serious and he said that was totally fine. I was trying to focus on my studies, so having a boyfriend was not in my plans. But after we went on 7 dates, he asked me to be his girlfriend. He wouldn't take no for an answer. After about a month, I finally said yes. Mind you, at this point, he hadn't seen me naked, not even in a bathing suit. The very night that I said yes to being his girlfriend, he asked me to come over to his place. He made a whole gourmet dinner, even bought super expensive wine. So we ended up doing it for the first time that night. The next morning when I woke up, the first thing he said to me was, "Do you ever exercise?" I was shocked. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend shames me for having cellulite. Disclaimers are not my story time, I sent me on Instagram. That's when he said point blank, super serious, "Do you ever exercise?" I just stared at him. I had literally just woken up in his bed after the first time we ever did it. Then I thought he must be joking. So I started to laugh a little, and then he says, "No, seriously, do you ever exercise?" I said, "Sometimes." Then he told me, "You should really try to work out at least 5 times a week." I went home and finally texted him saying that I wasn't comfortable with the way he spoke to me. That's when he said that what he said to me was completely normal, and that I shouldn't be offended. This was all in text, by the way. That's when he sends me another another text message saying, you wouldn't have as much cellulite as you do if you didn't eat so much fast food. And if you exercise 5 times a week like I told you. I didn't reply to him for the rest of the day. Later that day, he shows up to my apartment and says, I should feel comfortable enough to tell you what I think about you. He somehow ended up making me feel bad and I ended up apologizing. Obviously, after that, I became really self-conscious about my cellulite and my entire body. So anytime we were together, I would always stay under the covers. By the way, my boyfriend doesn't have a great body. He's super soft and pudgy. Last week, he told me that he had abs though. Part 3 is Storytime about how my boyfriend shames me for having cellulite. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, instead on Instagram. One day he pulls up his shirt and says, look, I have abs. Which no, he doesn't. He's super soft and has a thick layer of fat on it. I smirked and he said, what? And I said, you don't have abs. Then he says, yes, I do. I'm in better shape than you. By the way, he said this in front of his friends. So I was super embarrassed and stayed quiet the entire day. He finally went to drop me off and I was so happy to be home. But he decided to come upstairs with me. Got straight into my PJs. And when I came out of my bedroom, he says, wow, your cellulite's getting worse by the day. That's when I finally broke. I turned around and started yelling at him. I told him he had no right to talk about my body the way that he did, and that all he does is objectify me. He started laughing and said, wow, those are big words. And that when we met, he thought that I was in better shape. But my clothes obviously tricked him. I'm 5'4" and I weigh 130 pounds. I am by no means fat, but the way that he was bullying me was making me think that I was. That's when I told him that he was the fat one, and that he had a big, huge beer belly. I also told him that his face was super round, but that didn't bother me. Oh yeah, and that his hairy back was gross. Then he said, wow, I can't believe you're attacking my physical appearance. Then he stormed out of my apartment, and as soon as he left, I felt happy. We haven't spoken in 4 days. I'm afraid that if he asks me to get back with him, I will. But I should just break up with him, right? What should I do? My husband told me he wants a second wife. We are practicing Mormons and my husband believes that he deserves a second wife. When we first got engaged, I told him that the only way I would marry him was if he did not take on more wives. We've been married now for 6 months and he's already begging me to get a second wife. Part of me understands why he wants it, but the other part of me thinks it's just gratuitous. No man needs more than one wife. We met a few single women at church and he's been flirting with them nonstop. One of them in particular has been flirting back. Everyone in our church knows that my husband is not allowed to have another wife. This one girl keeps trying to get into our lives. She basically shows up everywhere we do, and she's always trying to catch his eye when we're at church. I found out a dirty little secret about her. A few years ago, she used to be a stripper. I threatened her to stay away from my husband. If not, I would tell him that she was a stripper. She actually told me that my husband wouldn't believe me and that she was gonna marry him anyway. I caught them texting and she was telling him how lonely she is. I told my husband that she was a stripper and he said that he didn't care. That she needed saving? What the heck should I do now? I don't want a second wife. My husband told me he wants a second wife update. That's when my husband told me that he still wants to marry her and that the church could save her. Since the news of her being a stripper in the past didn't turn him off, I had to start digging some more. I went onto her Facebook and started looking back through all of her pictures. I also went on her friends' and family's Facebooks too. On one of her friends' accounts, I found a post from 2012. They were partying it up in the Greek islands. As I looked closer into the picture, I saw there were 2 men with them. I started Googling the men's names and I found that they were both pimps. The more I searched, the more pictures I found of her with this one guy. And in some of the pictures, they were even making out. This is when it hit me. She was probably a pro. And this guy was pimping her out. My husband is so 2000s that he doesn't even have a computer. So I decided to go print out all of the evidence. I printed out all of the pictures of her and this guy, some of her family's pictures of her drinking and partying. I made my husband his favorite dinner and then I sat him down. I told him I would never accept a second wife, especially her. When I showed him all the pictures, he told me he felt sick. Apparently, she told him that she was a nun. Remember I said they had been texting? Well, they never stopped texting. Then he confessed that she even sent him a naked picture. Part 2 is my husband told me he wants a second wife update. And he finally accepted that this woman had been a pro in her past and a stripper. He said that he would stop speaking to her. Mind you, this all happened like 2 days ago. I asked my husband to show me his phone so that I could see the messages between them. He handed his phone over and started to cry. He said that she had lied to him and told him that she was a nun. Apparently, after she became a stripper, she decided to leave that life and become a nun. How stupid is my husband that he actually believed her? That's when I saw that she had sent him plenty of nudes. And I asked my husband, you think that this woman is a nun? And he said, you're right, I should have known. We went to church and told on her. Now everyone in the church knows her truth. But things get worse. After she found out that we told on her, she came over to our house and started threatening us. Wouldn't let her in the house, but then she begged my husband to let her in. And he opened the damn door. That's when she begged my husband to take her on as a second wife, and that she would be the best wife and even better than I am. While I'm standing right there. Thankfully, my husband used his one brain cell and said no. That's when she grabbed my hair and started banging my head against the wall. Stupid husband stood there watching. I had to fight her off alone. That's when she looked at both of us and said that we would regret it and she ran away. And my husband had another confession. They had hooked up once. Part 3 is my husband told me he wants a second wife update. That's when he confessed that they had hooked up once. That's when it all made sense to me. She was so upset because they had already hooked up. Then he told me that he had promised her a ring. At this point, my husband has cheated on me. I have grounds to divorce him. I was actually so upset I left the house. A few hours after his confession, he calls me and tells me to come right back home. And when I get home, all our clothes were ripped up. This crazy psycho girl came back to our house, took scissors, and started cutting up all our clothes. She even cut up my wedding dress. She flushed all my makeup down the toilet. She actually stole one of my husband's fire weapons. Now this is the thing that really scared scares us. We don't know what she's capable of. My husband is so stupid though that he doesn't want to report her to the police. He feels guilty for having taken advantage of her, which in all honesty, he definitely did. He slept with her and promised her a ring, packed up what I had left of my clothes, and I left my husband. I'm meeting a lawyer tomorrow and I'm gonna ask him for a divorce. I just honestly can't believe how stupid he is. And now I'm scared for my life. Thankfully, she doesn't know where my parents live. I'm also leaving the Mormon church. I'm taking my parents on a vacation. F you, husband.